Namaskar and welcome to Sansad Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our show Perspective, where we bring you detailed analysis of key national and international issues as well. Now, continuing with our series of Decoding the Union Budget 2022, today we will talk about the manufacturing and MSME sectors. Now, manufacturing and MSME are considered to be crucial to India's growth, and this year's budget has several initiatives to promote India as a manufacturing hub in clean tech manufacturing and self-reliance in select sectors. This includes the extension of concessional tax regime of 15% for newly incorporated domestic manufacturing companies till 31st of March 2024, continuation of a push for high-efficiency module manufacturing through the PLI scheme allocation of 19,500 crore, and promotion of exports by replacing the existing SEZ policy with a new regulation, along with promotion of private sector investments in the battery or energy as a service concept for improving the EV ecosystem. The defense manufacturing sector is another large beneficiary of this year's budget, with approximately 68% of the capital procurement budget being earmarked for the domestic industry in next financial year, which should further boost investments in domestic manufacturing in this key sector. Now, the Aatmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan and Make in India initiatives have also got a further flip through the phasing out of concessions in the imports of capital goods for certain products where sufficient domestic manufacturing capacity is now available. We'll discuss and analyze all these aspects and try and understand as to what is the roadmap which has been laid down by the union budget this year for manufacturing and MSME, which will then further give a push to Make in India or Aatmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. And for more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of experts. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with, we have with us Mr. Mukesh Mohan Gupta, President of the Chamber of MSME. We are also joined by Mr. Jyoti Prakash Gadia, Co-Chairman, CII Northern Region Committee on MSME, and Mr. Madhav Lal, former Secretary in the MSME Ministry, is also joining us. Welcome, all of you gentlemen, to the Sansad Television studio. Let me begin with you, Mr. Madhav Lal, and let's start by understanding what was the need as far as MSME sector is concerned and how those needs have been looked upon by the budget, this year's budget, and the roadmap planned in various aspects.
Yeah, so as you know, and the viewers know, that the MSME sector has been very important for the economy of India. And also the MSME sector is very important for the economies of all countries, primarily because it is a provider of a good deal of employment. The industry is localized and yet spread out throughout the length and breadth of the country. It contributes considerably to the GDP of the country. It contributes to the exports and so on and so forth. So the importance of the MSME sector is well established, and therefore the government has been supporting the MSME sector. Now, as far as this budget is concerned, I feel that we have to see what has been given in this budget, or what has been indicated in the finance minister's speech, is in line with what has been done over the last couple of years, especially through the pandemic. So I would like to mention in particular two major thrusts which have been clearly indicated for the MSME sector. One is the continuation and strengthening of the credit guarantee program of the government, which helps both the banks as well as the MSMEs. The other is, as you indicated in your opening remarks, is the thrust towards accelerating the progression of the MSMEs. That is to say that one of the problems has been that some of the MSMEs, it is generally felt, generally tend to stagnate. Now, how does a small enterprise become a medium enterprise and a micro enterprise become a small enterprise? And so how do they progress in the ladder within the MSME space itself? So this scheme of RAMP, which has been introduced with the allocation of about 6,000 crores, I think is directed towards that initiative. In the past, of course, a number of initiatives have been launched for new startups, about which, again, you alluded in your opening comments. So these are primarily the areas through which the government and the budget aims to address the issues of the MSME.
Okay, we'll get deeper into all these aspects one by one, but let's take the industry perspective here as well. I'll begin with you, Mr. Gupta, and let's start by understanding what is industry's view in terms of what has been done in the budget, and as Mr. Madhavlal was saying, building upon what was being done for the past few years as far as manufacturing and MSME is concerned.
So, Vishalji, thank you very much. And I would say that for me, and for the MSMEs, perhaps this budget should be considered as an MSME budget. Why I'm saying this thing? Because there was a special chapter in the budget named MSME, and 4 schemes from, if you see the budget from point number 39 to point number 42, 3 schemes are announced in this budget for MSME sector. One is that integration of 3 portals which will help and support these MSME sector in various ways. The another is extension of emergency credit line guarantee scheme up to 5 lakhs crore rupees, and additional 50,000 crore rupees exclusively for the sector which was badly impacted, being the hospitality sector. The another, as Madhavlal sir was referring to, 2 lakh crore rupees additional as a collateral security, because this is the most important demand of any MSME to provide the collateral free loan, and the ramp which sir was referring. In addition to this, I suppose all the provisions in the budget are for the MSME sector. I would like to explain you few provisions which are there and which MSME should consider are for them. The most important problem or the biggest problem of the MSMEs is the delayed payment from large corporate, and for that purpose, even for the government PSUs, government departments, government companies. Okay. A special provision under the heading government procurement has been made in this budget, wherein it is said that 75% of the running bills of the contractors will be paid in 10 days. Another important announcement with this budget is that an online e-bill system will be introduced for an end-to-end transaction, meaning thereby, which I could understand that whenever I raise a bill, I will upload this bill on this specialized bill portal, and till payment, I will be able to track the invoice, the payment module, and the payment system. A very, very important announcement is related to the bank guarantee for the MSMEs, particularly, I understand, because Vishalji, what happens, in fact, whenever any MSME try to take any government order through tender, or for that purpose, even for the large corporates, the biggest problem is to arrange performance bank guarantee for the tenders to be quoted. It happens that about 25% funds of equal to the against the bank guarantee are mandatorily to be kept as a margin money. I don't know what is the purpose of this 25% margin, because if this fund is released to these MSMEs, perhaps they will be able to take more orders from the government or from the large corporates. Okay. Another biggest problem in this bank guarantee is that, whenever they wish to participate in tender, they again have to go to the bank. Banks demands the 100% collateral security and the margin. Now, Honorable Finance Minister has told that they will introduce some insurance mechanism with the support of RDAI, wherein there will be no need for bank guarantee. I suppose this is the biggest support being given to the MSME sector, particularly by this budget. Okay. A very important thing which you also mentioned, in fact, for the manufacturing sector, because today we are discussing the manufacturing and MSME, tax regime of 15% was announced for the manufacturing companies, for the manufacturing MSMEs, which will commence their production by 31st of March 2023. Because of the pandemic, in fact, many of the MSMEs were not able to start their manufacturing. So this was, I suppose, the high demand of these manufacturing companies to avail the 15% tax benefit, to increase the date of commencement, and by extension of this 1 year for the commencement date of manufacturing till 31st of March 2024 will be definitely a big boost.
Those are the key points which you are mentioning, Mr. Gupta, there. And of course, the financing aspect there takes a lot of boost when you're talking about the bank guarantees. Of course, that extra money which stays with the MSMEs or the manufacturing units can come handy in terms of procuring more contracts as well. Of course, that is something which is being well received by the industry. Let me bring in Mr. Jyoti Prakash here as well. Jyoti, from your point of view, if we have to understand, some of these key aspects which Mr. Gupta was mentioning, I also, mentioned in my introductory remarks. But if we have to understand what was it that was needed in the MSME sector, and let's also not forget that the last 2 years have been a real test for the industry as well as for the government.
Just to give you some data in right perspective, which will set the context correct, as you have rightly pointed out that earlier two speakers, they have absolutely bang on that it is an MSME budget, and Madhavlalji has absolutely enumerated whatever the benefits are there. It is just a last year statistics that the suicide rate in the MSME has increased from 11.6%. It is 11.6% among the suicide rate of the MSME entrepreneurs. And the unemployed suicide rate is 10%. It means if I'm working, my suicide rate is far more higher than being an unemployed in India. So this is the kind of whatever the external pressures that the employed person might be getting. The second, as you wanted me to explain that what sort of some of the finer points that might be missing.
Okay.
There are two finer points that whatever the benefits that has been mentioned. First benefit which has been talked about is the 15% income tax benefit for the new companies. I would like to mention that 15% that income tax benefit is only given to the MSME which are corporate. It means either they have been formed as a private limited company or they have been formed as an LLP. This benefit of income tax of 15% is not given to any expansion or any new entity which has been formed under proprietorship or it has been formed under partnership level.
Okay.
95% of the Indian MSME or the small entrepreneurs, they are in the mode of partnership or the proprietorship module.
Okay.
The second, what has been mentioned about the bank guarantee benefit that has been given. In my general experience, what we have seen that it is only the central government undertaking and the central ministries which only takes care of this bank guarantee. Earlier, last year during the pandemic time, government has also come out with a scheme that up to 200 crore rupees of tender, there will not be any global tender which will be invited. But it has been, although there are very, very few central government undertaking which are following it, and I have not seen any of the state undertaking. And on behalf of CII, which is the one of the India's largest industrial associations, we receive so many complaints that so many state governments, so many other undertaking, they are not following that guidelines. The third important point, which I think was the missing point here, was that in terms of whenever there is any insolvency of any bigger companies happening, you have seen that now the bankers and the government is very, very prompt in terms of realization of their dues. Their banks and the government and the IBBI rules has clearly laid down that how the liquidation value or how that amount would be, whatever amount that is being realized by selling that company,
Okay.
how that amount will be recalculated or that amount will be distributed.
Mm-hmm.
In that distribution list, MSME has nowhere in that list itself, or it is at the bottom of the pyramid.
Okay.
So where is that MSME in terms of, there are few things which are definitely indirectly going to benefit MSME, which I personally feel there are three important parameters. First important parameter, it is the capital expenditure, which has been increased by 35%.
Mm-hmm.
This definitely is one of the great booster where MSME is going to get a great benefit. In the defense sector procurement, where the procurement from the MS or from the indigenous companies, they have told indigenous companies,
Mm-hmm.
has been increased by 10%, from 58% to 68%.
Mm-hmm.
The third, it is the residential houses that will be constructed and the roads of 25,000 kilometers that will be constructed.
Okay.
So this is the amount of capital expenditure. And lastly, on top of it, it is the PLI scheme.
Okay.
In the PLI scheme itself, whatever that the 13 ministries has come out with the guidelines and other things, it is generally benefiting the large and the medium scale companies. Micro and the small companies are not fitting into the guidelines of the PLI as on date. But definitely there will be a trickle down impact on the MSME because of ancillary development that will take place.
Okay, indeed, the
So we are okay with
ancillary development aspect is really important there, which you're mentioning, Jyoti, you know, and this is going to be important vis-a-vis the defense sector as well. But those points which you mentioned, I'd like to bring in Mr. Madhav Lal here. Mr. Lal, you know, do you agree that there is, of course, always a scope for improvement, but these are the finer points which perhaps, you know, addressed in the future will add more value or give more push to the MSME sector?
Yeah, I think what has been mentioned here only highlights the fact that the MSME sector is not homogeneous.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever policies are made or whatever programs are introduced or initiatives are taken, say, or in the budget or otherwise, they impact differently on different segments of the MSME. So a broad classification, of course, is that there is a services sector and there is a manufacturing sector. But within the MSME sector, then you have, you know, the micro enterprises, small enterprises, the medium scale enterprises, and then various verticals are there.
Okay.
The different production chains and supply chains which exist for any industry, the MSMEs also operate within them. So a given set of policies or an individual program may be more beneficial for one segment of the MSME, and it may not benefit the other segments as much.
Okay.
Now, having said that, I feel that a lot of emphasis is given to the to these programs, which, as was mentioned earlier, they tend to essentially benefit the better off MSMEs, that is the MSMEs which are corporatized, the MSMEs which are high tech and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And they generally, or they frequently, I would say, elude the micro enterprises. So that is another issue.
Okay.
But as you know, one can look at for any set of programs or any sector, we have to see overall what a budget is presenting.
Indeed, indeed.
Or what is the nature of the architecture which is being created and how does it benefit the MSMEs, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have to look at programs which address the needs of the segments which tend to get left out.
Okay.
So I think I would view the budget holistically from this point of view, that there are things, you know, which are directly benefiting certain type of MSMEs, which may be the thrust areas. A mention was made of the priority linked incentives. There is no doubt that it is certain sectors have been identified, first of all.
Indeed.
And then within those sectors, depending on the hierarchy of the industry and the ancillary setup within that value chain, certain industries will benefit and certain industries may not directly benefit.
Okay. Okay.
So
it has to be, you know, looked at in a holistic manner, as you're pointing out, Mr. Madhav Lal. I'll come back to you, but you know, bringing in Mr. Gupta here. Mr. Gupta, when we're talking about various aspects, the two key aspects, you know, moving away from you know, viewing the budget in a holistic manner vis-a-vis MSMEs or sector specific. Let's look at two specific aspects. One is promotion of exports, and the other is clear tech. There seems to be a lot of focus there and a lot of initiatives being announced. Mr. Gupta?
Yeah, definitely. So as I was referring to, in fact, that for export also, for skilling also, for ease of doing business, ease of living, I suppose many aspects which are important for the MSME sectors have been touched upon in this budget, which will ultimately definitely be helpful, supportive for the MSME sector, as my friend Mr. Gadia was referring to about the insolvency and bankruptcy. I agree with him that he was talking about the waterfall mechanism which is provided under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016. We are advocating since this code was inducted in 2016 that this waterfall mechanism is totally against the MSME sector, which are the operational creditors actually, because the major portion goes to the financial sectors, financial creditors only. So this is a big demand since the inception of this insolvency and bankruptcy code. Another demand we wanted, in fact, the finance minister to allow default amount of at least 10 lakh rupees, particularly for the MSME sector, because this default amount was increased from 1 lakh rupees to 100 lakhs rupees. So 100 times increase was made, and this insolvency and bankruptcy code was helping the MSMEs in fast recovery of their dues, though it is not a recovery code, but still it was. In this budget, in fact, the Honorable Finance Minister has made a point, has made a chapter on insolvency and bankruptcy code, where she has told that they are looking for some amendments, some changes in the insolvency and bankruptcy code, including the cross-border transaction. That can be a very good thing. As far as the some international arbitration center formation has also been discussed, as far as your question related to export business and all those things. Perhaps that can also be a good support to MSME sector. As related to the insolvency and bankruptcy code, I suppose the another important issue was whenever any MSME, as Mr. Gadia was also referring to, that he was giving some data of the society and all those things. To me, it may be easy for starting of any business, but in case there is some eventualities, it was difficult for these MSMEs to opt for the exit mode.
That aspect is also indeed being taken care of there, Mr. Gupta. We're running short of time, but Jyoti, a quick comment from you on the emerging sectors, specifically when we're talking about the EV sector or the ecosystem out there. The push which is being given, both in terms of, and it's not just about EV, the solar modules as well there.
I think this is where the government has scored all the points there in terms of sustainability, in terms of EV, whatever that we could think of doing it. It is clearly coming out as a highlight of this budget that this is the priority area of the government in terms of promoting this green energy, EV and other things. And one thing also I'd like to mention to all the viewers here, that whatever the fund that has been created by the government in terms of 10,000 crore, which is going to increase to 50,000 crore of investment that is going to come up. There again, there is an internal guideline which has recently come up, which says that the majority of that equity and other things will be given priority for all these green energy MSME companies. Same thing into this PLI scheme also, where the module manufacturing has been given so much of importance, and the extra layout has also been planned for that. I think so this budget clearly stands out and clearly speaks loud about the importance and the government thrust area to this clean energy scheme and to this sustainability target of the government.
One last question to you, Mr. Madhavlal, before we bring this to an end, and that is with regard to that, partnership with the state governments, vis-a-vis, building up of industrial banks, land bank out there. How do you think this is going to pan out and its impact overall?
It is very important because essentially the MSME sector is spread throughout the length and breadth of the country. And one of in fact, the strong points is that through this we can get inclusivity in the development. So the role of the state governments, and I would say even of the local governments, is very important. Some of the state governments have taken very good initiatives. And this program of one district, one product, and so on, which essentially focuses on the value chains within the industry and especially the manufacturing, is extremely important. So I do visualize that the state governments will, see eye to eye with the indications which are emerging from this budget and give the emphasis on the same kind of areas where the central government is, given a thrust to the budget. Having said that, MSME sector is extremely important for the employment generation.
Indeed.
So that is an area, I think, which has to be looked into at the state government level as well as at the central level. And if there are any, as I mentioned in the beginning, if there are any programs which need to be tweaked to give emphasis to where the employment really lies or where the employment can be generated quickly, I think that would be a good thing.
Indeed, there it is. Thank you so much, Mr. Madhavlal. Mr. Mukesh Mohan Gupta, as well as Mr. Jyoti Prakash, for sharing your views and insight with our viewers. As our experts were pointing out, of course, the MSME sector is not a homogeneous sector, and various aspects will have to be looked into. But this was all being done in this year's budget. As far as manufacturing and MSME is concerned, quite a lot of focus on clean tech, that is areas like electric vehicles or manufacturing of solar modules, the green sustainable development which we're talking about, and various other aspects in terms of the needs of MSME sector has also been looked into and addressed in this year's budget. We'll come back again with a different topic. Till then, keep watching Sansad Television. Thank you.